In this demonstration, we'll take a look at how to configure Syslog on a Juniper device. Now, the first thing that I want to show you is the default configuration of Syslog on this Juniper router. If I do a show system syslog, you'll see that we do have default events that are being monitored and also a default file called messages that the information is being monitored to. So a little bit more on that in just a minute. The next thing that I want to show you here is I'm going to exit out of the router. I'm going to totally go out and log back in as root. And what I want you to notice when I log in, you'll notice that I do have the Junos OS version here, but notice that I don't have any information that's displayed on the screen as far as events that have occurred. And the reason being is by default, the syslog feature is writing to a message file. So what I can do is, the first thing I want to do here is, let me go back into the CLI and go into configuration mode with the edit command. Now the first thing that I want to do is I do want to log syslog information or syslog messages out to the console, let's say. So I'm going to use my set system syslog command, and I'm going to use a question mark here so I can see the list of parameters. Just a few things that I want you to see here. You can see that we can apply configuration groups here if we wanted to. You'll notice that we do have a console parameter that could be specified to log to the console, or if you wanted to, you could specify a file that you want to log to. So by default, we log to the messages file, but you could create an additional file. If you do want to log or send log information to a syslog server, then we do have a host option as well. And then there's also a source address option that's used to specify the source IP address that you want the logs to come from. So let me set this to console, and then I'm going to use a question mark. And the parameter after the console parameter is which events do you want to be notified of, right? Or which events do you want logged? So there's authorization type events, which are anything that deals with authentication and authorization. There's any to record everything. There's change log as an event type, which is any changes to the configuration. Conflict log, any conflict changes. There's FTP as an example, so it'll log any events that occur with the FTP process or FTP service. So there's many different event types here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to specify authorization, and then I'm going to hit question mark. And after you specify the event type, and I do want you to note that I could have used any there to log everything to the console, but so I'm going with authorization. Now the next thing I want you to see here is the question mark is the type of events, right? So do you want to know about information related events? Do you just want to know about error messages, critical conditions that occur, or do you want to know about any authorization related events? So I'm going to go with any here and hit enter. So what I've done here is I've configured syslog to display event information or messages to the console, which is my screen. So I'm going to exit out here. I forgot to commit the changes. So I'm going to commit. And then I'm going to exit out and exit out and exit out one more time. So I've totally disconnected from the router. Now I'm going to log back in as root, but I'm also going to supply the wrong password. And then I'm going to log in with the correct password. There we go. So you'll notice that I do get a lot more output this time when logging in. You'll notice that here on January 2nd, this time on the New York R1 login, there was an authentication error. So there's the type of message, or there's the message itself. So it's a password authentication module authentication error for user root. So notice that the actual message was written to the console because I've configured syslog to write to the console. So that's interesting. Now I'm going to change that. So I'm going to go back into the CLI and go back into configuration mode with an edit command. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete system syslog console. So I'm going to get rid of that from my configuration. And what I want to do is I do want to show you how we can configure syslog to write the messages, right? So we can do a set system syslog. The file that I want to specify is log-messages. And then same thing. So this time I'm configuring syslog to record to a file instead of the console. Same idea, you have two parameters, the type of messages. So again, I could do any here, or I could do authorization, which is what I'm going to do, and any authorization related messages. So these are authentication and authorization type messages are going to get logged to that file. So I'm going to commit that. Now let me log out and log back in. So I log in as root, wrong password, log in as root, the correct password. Notice that I don't have the output on my console on the screen itself, right? Let me go back into the CLI, and to view the actual log file, you can use the show log-messages. When I hit enter, you can see the syslog messages that have been recorded to that file. So that's interesting. So I'm going to type in edit to go back into configuration mode. And the next thing that I want to show you how to do is how to configure syslog to write the event information to a syslog server. So you can use the set system syslog. The host that I want to write the messages to, which is the syslog server, is 10.0.0. Let's say 100, 10.0.0.100. And then you specify the types of events. So I'm going to put a question mark here so you can see I have the same types of events. You know, there's any there, authorization, change log, FTP, firewall related events, right? All that stuff is in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with any event and then choose the type of event, whether it's an error or an information event or a critical. So I'm going to go with any. So I'm going to record everything to that syslog server. So the syslog server acts as a central monitoring server for all your network devices. So you could configure all your devices and reference the syslog server of 10.0.0.100. You just got to make sure that there is a syslog server running at that system. So now I just want to look at my configuration. So I do a show system syslog, and we can see here that I have configured syslog for the host 10.0.0.100 to record any messages to that syslog server. And I do have a file called log messages here, which has authorization related messages. So in this demonstration, you saw how to configure syslog on a Juniper device.